Hey everybody, how are you? Happy 2026. Yeah. Welcome to the Financial Thing live stream. Haven't been here for a couple of weeks. Took a bit of a break over the holidays. Hope you guys are doing really well. It is Friday, January 16th. Wow, we took more than a couple of weeks off. I had family in town from the UK, so I thought I'm going to give myself a bit of a rest and come back strong in 2026. So here we are on a Friday. Of course, the weather is pretty nice. I changed the camera back to the old, camera view of a good old scratching dog. Remember how things were? And outside is very sunny and cool temperatures in the teens. We actually had freezing temperature last night, which we don't really get that much in Florida, but last night was one of those rare occasions. Anyway, not that you care about that, but what are we going to talk about this evening? And it is the evening for most of you in the UK who are hopefully tuning in. If not, you tune in later, but please hit that thumbs up button if you can. I had an interesting email very recently, which was asking me about the general feelings that I had towards peer-to-peer lending. And I get asked that question a lot. I really do. It really is probably the most requested response of myself. How do I feel about peer-to-peer lending? What is going on? Would I invest? And since now it's 2026, I decided to revisit that topic once more and just really think about that question intentionally. And how do I really feel about the space that I came into in 2015? I started Financial Thing as a way to document my own journey and to really hold myself accountable for learning how to become an investor, because when I was, I would have been, 9 years ago? Was it 2015? 11 years ago. I was in my early 40s and I just didn't know anything about investing, wasn't thinking about the future, hadn't invested much at all, had a few, BT shares, Shell shares that my dad had got me when I was young. But other than that, a little bit here and there in a retirement account, but I didn't know anything about investing. I really wanted to hold myself accountable, hence the Financial Thing blog, which still exists today. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have, but it's still there. I don't update it as much as I should, but it's still there. I think there's some good information on there. You can see the Cufflink review with a 1.5-star rating. Now, some of these graphics need to be updated, but anyway, so I started the blog, and then it turned into this live stream, and my heart was in particularly good feelings for peer-to-peer lending back in 2015-16. I really believed in the space. There was a lot of naivety, I think, there, and trust. But I got this question anyways, and I'll get to it in a few minutes and give you my kind of thoughts in 2026 and what I think about peer-to-peer honestly now, because I feel, I have to be very transparent about the information that I provide to you guys. Some of you have been here, and you girls too, but some of you have been here since the very beginning when I started doing this in 2000. What was it, 8 years ago? 8 years ago. This was one of the oldest videos here. It was 9 years ago. It was my first video, but then we had the Peer-to-Peer Lending Essentials podcast in episode 001.
And we're going to discuss
Look at that.
all things that appear to.
Young Lawrence there had a bit more color in the hair, but that was 8 years ago. I don't know what the exact date was. Yeah, March 13th, 2017. And some of you have been here watching for that long, and I feel very grateful for that. And I feel a transparency that I need to put forward to really what my thoughts are on peer-to-peer lending and other things. Anyway, but I'll talk about that. We'll do a little bit of peer-to-peer news. There really isn't much anymore. In fact, I was going through the alternative credit investor website, and I just really couldn't find much about peer-to-peer lending in general, and just not in the news. So there isn't really much news, but I got a few things that I want to chat about. I want to talk about Cufflink and my thoughts towards them. And also, we're going to hop on the peer-to-peer independent forum and look at a post that somebody posted on there, which I thought was really good, and take a look at Fourth Way's articles on the 7 best peer-to-peer lending platforms in their opinion out there. We'll take a look at the Trading 212 portfolio. A few other things, some investing stuff, a little bit of cryptocurrency stuff. So, yeah. Glad to see you guys, though. Happy 2026. What did you do for New Year's this year? Did you do anything? I stood on the beach in Daytona Beach, Florida, of all places, and watched the fireworks go off over the ocean. It was very cold. It was chilly, but it was a really wonderful experience. So I hope you guys had a good New Year's, whatever you did. Hi, Mike Powell. Hi, Aki Chap. Hi, Crazy Cash Pap. And evening, Steve Thomas. Thanks to everybody for always tuning in, watching the videos and support. Much love, honestly, to all of you. I really just express so much gratitude. I know I say that a lot, but it's true. I think, wow, how weird is it that you guys want to tune in here and watch me chit-chat for 60 minutes when you could be doing something else. So gratitude is definitely there. But let's get right into it. A little bit of Lend Invest news. This is from December 15th, but Lend Invest secures £175 million development funding from HSBC and AB Carval. I've always said this, I find it really interesting that Lend Invest still continues to offer a retail product to people like you and I, because I think that the amount of money that they're getting from retail investors now must be relatively small. It must be a tiny percent of, the amount of money they're getting from institutions. And news stories like that just really confirms to me that I would not be surprised, and I've been saying this for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised if Lend Invest pulls the plug on retail and just says, we really don't need retail. It's a small percentage of the amount of money that we bring in anyways to lend. When we're getting things like, £175 million credit lines from HSBC, I know that they're not getting £175 million from retail investors, but they keep on continuing to secure these institutional credit lines that they're able to lend out. And really, Lend Invest has been a very slow and steady platform for investing, not peer-to-peer lending, I understand, but more of a non-traditional way for you to put in money and get yourself a decent return, probably in the 6.5% to 7% range. So not bad. They also put out a platform update in November. I don't know if I went through this or not, but we'll go through it again. Number of investments posted, only 2 for November. And November and December tends to be a really slow time in the lending field because of the holidays upcoming. So 8% average return offered on just those 2 investments, £175,000 for those tranches, so $349,500, which again is very small for Lend Invest. I think this might be the smallest amount of investment that I've seen them put out on one of their platform update newsletters. We have on schedule 68 loans, or in arrears 8 loans, out of turn 5, enforcement 5. So same kind of numbers we've been seeing previously. What else? Let's just go to this. Let's just go right into this, okay? Hi, Lawrence. Happy New Year to you. Haven't seen you online much recently. Hope you come back soon. Thank you, Trevor. Yes, I am officially back today. Been taking some time off. What are your thoughts about peer-to-peer lending now? With Cufflink seemingly having issues, I'm really concerned. Would you still invest in peer-to-peer lending loans? Would welcome your thoughts and perhaps a good topic for your next live show. Yeah, Trevor. Absolutely a great topic. I think transparently, like I said, I created the Financial Think blog to be really about a space that I was just super excited about. I found it innovational to combine tech with finance. I thought it was really cool. And it was a good way to be able to earn returns on money. And I think I was somewhat very naive hopping into this space in 2015. Welcome, Annabelle. Nice to see you. Happy New Year to you, my Spanish-speaking friend, Annabelle Nairn. Welcome. Thanks for joining. But yeah, I was very naive back then. And only when I started to really investigate deeply into what I'd actually put my money into, and I think a lot of novice investors fall prey to this. Like, they invest in things that they truly do not understand. And I was definitely one who did that. And I think that also spills over into stocks and shares, right? A lot of the times we're investing into companies that we really truly don't understand what their financial positions are. I'm not an accountant. I can't read books and books and pages of financials because a lot of the times I really don't understand. But going into peer-to-peer lending, it was a topic that I really kind of blindly threw money into because I had this immense trust for what was being advertised. We'll take, Collateral, for instance, puts out a product, right, that offers pretty mouth-watering returns. All I have to do is shove money into these loans and I get back money every month or whatever that time frame is. Turned out to be a bunch of nonsense, right? So I had an immense amount of trust for what I was being sold. And I absolutely take full responsibility for those mistakes because ultimately nobody put, their hands around my throat and said, you need to invest in peer-to-peer lending. That was my responsibility to do more deep diving into where I was throwing my money. And I didn't do that. I didn't do that when I invested through Zopa. I didn't do that through RateSetter. I didn't do it through Funding Circle. I didn't do it through Collateral. And nor Lendy, nor Funding Secure, and those other defunct companies where I got burned. And I think I deserve to get burned. Yes, I do put a lot of responsibility onto the people that set up those companies and really falsely advertised to us a product that maybe they didn't have the experience to offer. And I do put a lot of responsibility on their shoulders, but I put the same amount of responsibility onto my own shoulders for putting my own money into products that I didn't really understand. So fast forward to 2026, I get this question this year, and I really started to ponder about this whole space, this whole peer-to-peer lending space. And a circumstance that came up for me recently was an unexpected tax bill that I had the obligation to pay HMRC money that I didn't really plan very well for this tax bill. And I had some money in peer-to-peer lending, specifically LoanPad. And I thought, well, gosh, the smart thing would be to pull that money out of there and to pay this tax bill off. And then I started thinking about, well, when I do that, what then happens in the future? Do I continue to invest in peer-to-peer lending? Am I going to replenish that money that I'm pulling out of LoanPad to pay this tax bill when my LoanPad account balance is going to go from 5 figures down to 3 figures because that money is going to go to pay taxes? And I started thinking about that, and I thought about also, if one of my family members came to me and said, here's some money, what would you do with it? Would I tell them to trot off to peer-to-peer lending, invest that money? And I think in my heart of hearts, honestly, the real answer to that is no. I wouldn't at this point. And why is that? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. Number one, I think there's better places now to invest and to get the same returns, possibly even better, with lower risk. The problem is with peer-to-peer lending, and this is the factor that I've been told about from people that run peer-to-peer lending companies, that is an unavoidable fact. It's an unavoidable problem that not you or I can solve. Even the employees of these peer-to-peer companies cannot solve this, and this is platform risk. It's the idea that something can change so fast, so quickly that we don't have time to make an adjustment. And I think a perfect example of that is, Money Thing and the house crowd and Lendy. The things change so fast, and they change behind closed doors that we did not have access to, even though we were being told all the right things. I had these people on interviews, right, from Lendy, telling me all the right things, telling me what I wanted to hear, and giving me good feelings about the company. Maybe I didn't have great feelings about them, but by the time things change behind closed doors, behind access, we didn't have access to this information. It was simply too late. And of course, what happens, that results in capital losses. And for those of you that have been investing in peer-to-peer lending for a long time, you are affected by that, right? Myself also. A lot of capital being lost and taking years and years of interest payments from good peer-to-peer lending companies to make up for the thousands of pounds that were lost in places like Lendy and Funding Secure, and Money Thing, and Able Rate, and the list goes on, Wellesley. There's just been too many bad players in the market, and this is the big problem. And then we get this cufflink situation, right? Narinda, CEO, leaves the company unexpectedly, lets me know he's gone. And then I start to think, well, wow, that really happened so fast. There wasn't any time. There was no, inkling that Narinda was going to leave. And Narinda left Cufflink. And then what happens? We get this November 2025 announcement that Cufflink must close down its auto lend product from the FCA, telling them they had to do that. And number two, cannot accept any new investors and any new lenders. Well, of course, the red flags are going off again, right? It's like, is this really going to happen again? We have this period of kind of calm, quiet, 18 months where no particular issues were coming up in peer-to-peer lending. There was a few, some people could say, well, crowd property, maybe some red flags going off there, but we had at least some calm time. We didn't have another Lendy situation. We didn't have another collateral situation. People were starting to become comfortable at that point that maybe the peer-to-peer lending space was going to be okay. And then you get the dagger in the heart of the Cufflink situation. And after Cufflink, I really started thinking about safety, right? Preservation of capital is everything. If you are being advertised 10, 12% returns, what use is that, honestly, if your capital goes down the toilet, right? It's useless. 12% is useless if your entire amount of capital is massively at risk. So what I want to say is, I think there's some really good players in the space of peer-to-peer lending. I believe wholly in what, not financial advice, please do your own research, but what Louis is doing at LoanPad. I trusted him enough to have 5 figures of my own money parked there for a decent amount of time. And I probably would have left the money there if I didn't have to pay this tax bill. So I trusted Louis. I'd been to visit Louis many times over in London, and I felt good about the product that he was offering, about the person that he is, and, about the team members who he works with. Now, could that change? Absolutely. That could change, and it could change so fast. That is the biggest problem. The platform risk that comes associated with peer-to-peer lending, in my opinion now at this point, is the biggest issue with peer-to-peer lending. That comes along with the type of loans that they do. Assets capital, for example, loan money to people that defaulted. They made bad loans, which in turn, affected you and I, and everybody invested through assets capital. So it's kind of like this domino effect. You lend poorly to bad loans, to bad companies, and then what happens? Your default rates raise higher, and then your retail investors like you and I lose confidence in the company and decide we don't want to invest there anymore, start pulling out money, and then you can't bring any new lenders. Now, interestingly, I went to Cufflink's website, and I tried to register, right, for a new account. not only do I get this weird pop-up that says protect the wealth you built, inheritance tax, blah, 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 through our specialist partner Morrow, we can obtain inheritance tax insurance. So that's weird. But also, secure your spot. We'll be welcoming new customers soon. If you'd like to join our waitlist, please complete our contact form. We'll notify you as soon as registration opens. I can't for the life of me think that people will be rushing to invest through Cufflink anymore after what has happened. We still don't know, really any details about why the FCA told Cufflink to stop taking on new lenders. I certainly haven't had an update. Maybe you have. Maybe I missed it. Why did they do that? Why did they not send out information transparently to say, hey, this is what's going on. We want to make sure you guys are kept up with the progress, kept up with the news. That is another red flag to me. I don't think I have it in my bones to take another one of these platforms going under, because I have had too many of these at this point that have failed. Doing calculations on rate of return on my overall, with including losses, is probably in the 4.5% to 5% range annually over the last, 9 years. It's not been great, right? I mean, that's not a great rate of return. And again, I want to state that I do believe there's a lot of good, I think there's a lot of good players in the space. I think Blend Network. In fact, let's look at Fourth Way's 7 best peer-to-peer lending accounts in the UK, done by Neil Faulkner, who, by the way, has access to way more information than I ever had. He's been assessing peer-to-peer lending accounts since 2014. Let's see if I agree with this. Capital Stacker's talented, honest management team has enabled investors to constantly earn high interest rates, albeit with greater risk. Okay, yep. Loan Pad, yep. Axia Funder, offering 20% plus returns, which are achievable. It's investing through legal lawsuit funding. Housemartin, yep. Think they're good. Somo, don't know too much about Somo, but have to give that one to them if they think it's good. Propland, absolutely agree. Capital Rise, I've met the Capital Rise team. Seems to be good. I don't know too much extensively about them, but I would say if I was picking off this list, Propland, Housemartin, LoanPad, that would be my 3 out of the 7. So I do think there are still good people in the space. I think Blend Network, Jan over there has been doing a great job for many, many years, very consistent, and I think he'll continue to do well. The problem is for us old school investors, the ones that have gotten burned by the Lendies and there's just so many of them, the money things and the house crowds. I cannot stomach another company going under. So the short answer to this very long spiel, right? What are your thoughts about peer-to-peer now? With Cufflink having issues, I'm concerned. I think you should be concerned. Would I still invest in peer-to-peer lending loans? I think right now, as of January 2026, I would not. And which is sad. That makes me sad because my whole financial bubble encompasses peer-to-peer lending for the most part. Yes, I've dabbled in other topics like, stock investing, the Trading 212 portfolio. But what will become a financial thing if I don't necessarily believe in the product anymore? I think financial thing will still continue to exist. This Livestream will probably still continue to be existing, but the emphasis may not be so much on peer-to-peer lending anymore, because if in my gut I'm feeling like, would I take all of the money that I've had to pay my tax bill with and put it back in peer-to-peer lending? I'm not sure about that. I think the answer is probably no at this point. Not because I don't believe in LoanPad, but LoanPad's rates have dropped again. Let's go take a look what they are right now. We're under 5% classic now, and 5.9% on the premium. So after you pay tax, which I don't have ISAs in these companies, you're really not doing that great. I don't know what the tax calculation would come off of this, but I'm thinking it has to be 1.5 right? Maybe a 1% in tax, reducing this by 1% for taxes. I just think that there may be better places now to put money that maybe the risk is a lot lower. And I think that's really the most important idea about investing, is like, how much return are you getting paid for the amount of risk that you are taking, right? This is why I've enjoyed looking at things like Bitcoin, because I think the amount of risk that I'm taking, while some may consider it to be very high, which I don't consider it super high, but the amount of possible returns I can get on that is way more exponential than me investing through a peer-to-peer lending company. And I found that out the hard way through the companies that have gone bankrupt or out of business on me over the last 9 years. Will I continue to have some money invested in peer-to-peer lending? Probably, yeah, but they'll be small. There'll be small amounts for now. And I'm gonna tell you about something that I've been keeping an eye out for the last few months, that I put some money into. Again, not financial advice. And I think the idea of this live stream and now what financial thing will become is kind of just me sharing about my experience in investing, what I'm doing, right or wrong, because I'm pretty transparent. I mean, obviously I tell you about, I'm invested through Funding Secure, Lendy. Obviously I've lost money. I show you the good and bad side. So, but I'll tell you about something, what really made me think about why I would consider steering away from peer-to-peer lending, because I think there may be better places to put money. But again, I don't want to harp too much on this, but I still really think there are good players in this space. Not everybody's bad. You just got to avoid the bad ones, and unfortunately it sometimes could be really hard avoiding the bad ones. Maybe if you just stick to fourth ways, 7 best, you'd be fine. I don't know. I think I've got a bit of a sour taste in my mouth from the bad past experiences, that I just don't get excited about it anymore. I don't get excited when I see peer-to-peer lending. There's no new companies coming into the space that are really making me feel good and getting me excited about this space anymore, which is sad, because this is a 9-year financial thing project to me. But things change, right? Things change, and they change quickly, and I think you have to be able to adapt with things as they change. Sometimes you have to cut things loose that are no longer serving you, right? So maybe that's it. Anyway, so answer that question. Would I still invest in peer-to-peer lending loans? Some things, yes, but in large amounts of money, no. I think a place like LoanPad is a good place to keep money short term if you need it. I think they offer a really unique product. But would I invest big amounts of money in peer-to-peer lending loans now at this point? Personally, not for me. Yeah. And we'll see what happens with Cufflink. I don't know. There's a lot of talk and chatter about what's going on over there. I think, again, things really soured if you go to the peer-to-peer lending forums and you read what people's general feelings are about peer-to-peer. I think they share some of the same things that I do, especially the people that have been around for a long time. They're pretty sour, and most people, just they don't want to take the risk anymore of capital loss. Can't blame them. What do you feel like? What is your plan for 2026? Are you going to continue to keep investing in peer-to-peer lending? Do you think there's better places out there where you can get more return for your money? So again, sometimes you just got to cut things off when you think maybe there are better alternatives. Yeah, and just to be transparent, I still have money in LoanPad. I see a lot of money in assets. Capital is being drawn down. I'm going to draw down money in unbolted. And then I have some money, stuck in a couple of other places that are no longer in business. So my holdings, and I have crowd property, but again, it's small. So those holdings are going to reduce through to 2026 unless something miraculous happens to where I'm just super excited about the space again. But I also think it's good to sit back and view things from a distance if you don't feel like things are going the way you want. You can always exit and come back in. Maybe in 2027 the picture will look different. It'll look better and I'll come back in. We'll see. Let's look at this. This is a post somebody put up, Ace, who's a moderator of the peer-to-peer independent forum, about his performance for 2025. My whole peer-to-peer portfolio XIRR has fallen from 5.8 to 5.35%. As always, these figures excluded accrued profits that yet haven't been paid. The poor headline figure masks some excellent returns from some platform as it's dragged down by past decisions that continue to weigh heavily, which I can't escape from. Exactly what I've been saying, right? Past decisions that weigh heavily and resulting in some poor performances. He also highlights 29% return from the money platform, 21% from Axia Funder, 10% from Somo and Elfin Market, LoanPad, PropLend, Unbolted, HouseMart, and Capitalizer worthy of note for their solid performances. Had my portfolio consisted of equal investments in just those 9, we would have returned over 12%. If I added another 9 platforms that I was happy to continue lending with at the start of last year, this would have still have given me a rate of return of 9%. So there you go. The question is kind of like stock picking, right? You got to pick the right stocks to get the right returns, and you pick the wrong stocks, it brings down your entire portfolio percentage. So anyway, you can go over there, you can read. He has a lot of platforms on here. Kind of looks like I used to be. But the money platform, super high risk, right? But he's done extremely well with that. So maybe one to look at. I don't know. You need to have probably 10 grand on that platform though to make sure you're diversified enough, because you need to watch out for the bad loans. Incidentally, I was on Trustpilot just looking at Cufflink's feedback. There is a lot of 1-star reviews that are popping up on there. People saying about avoid. As a customer for many years, I would avoid this. Made my mistake in 2020. This lot need locking up. So a lot of negative sentiment, unfortunately. Boo to that. Let's go to Trading 212. See what's going on. Portfolio is doing better. £28,269 and 74p. I've had a decent month. 13.2% increase in 1 month. We are now fully invested. 0 in the main pot. Look at that, 0. It's been a while since it's been 0. And 86% in the green. Nvidia, 27%. Amazon, 50% in the red. Strategy, which has started to make a bit of a comeback. Strategy got up to 184.55, is now back to 171, but looking a lot better than $151 that it was back in the end of December. Tesla, 18% in the red. Iron has clawed its way back last month. Look at that. All the way down to $33, now up to 57. So 58% plus. So we're a little bit in the green because we bought in at a bad time, but 6%. Look at this Rocket Lab, 52%. Had a massive month. Probably a good time to sell, but I'm stubborn. And we have a new addition, UiPath, which is now 5% in the red, so we got a couple of thousand invested in there. Nebius 12.95% in the red, up 33% in the last month. Cypher Mining is clawing its way back to even with 25% in the last month, but we are just a little bit under even. So portfolio, again, we're trying to get this back to 30,000 where it was before. I think we're slightly over diversified. I'm starting to think that when you're too diversified, you got the plus 50%, of Rocket Labs with the minus 49% of strategy, and that's the problem that you have with stock picking. But we'll see what happens with that as 2026 gets off to a pretty decent January. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this interesting product that, again, not financial advice, so please, but I got an email about it, and this was something I invested in right when it was released, so I thought it was a good time to kind of look at it, and it is now available in the UK. So Strategy, Michael Saylor, of course, that's the stock that I own here that has taken a beating. They have offered certain products in 2025 to create yield, which gives better yield than something like a savings account. And that money is used, the money that Strategy takes in from these preferred credit products that they've offered, they use it to buy Bitcoin. So their goal is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as they possibly can by offering products. I was looking at this product called STRC, aka Strike, when this thing first got released. I thought, this is interesting. 11% annual dividend. The goal is to peg the price to $100 and to pay an 11% dividend. Right now there's about $3 billion, I think, inside of STRC. And what is interesting about this product, it is listed on the NASDAQ, by the way. What's interesting, though, is now available in the UK. A lot of these products you cannot buy in the UK. So you can get it on Hargreaves Lansdown. And I just ran it through ChatGPT to sort of get a clear, very simple description of what it is and why I like it personally. And again, this is why, when I look at peer-to-peer lending, right, I sort of look at peer-to-peer lending like a fixed income product. You put your capital in, you hope your capital doesn't reduce, and you hope that you get paid returns on a steady amount of capital, which really operates kind of like a bond, right? You put a bond in for a year, you hope you get your capital back at the end of the year with your little bit of interest on top. So this STRC product, I think is kind of revolutionary because it's offering really something that doesn't exist in the space of investing. Now, some of you are not going to like it because it is based around a Bitcoin product. And, there's people out there, I hear it every day, is Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. It's never going to survive, even though it has been surviving for many, many, many years, over a decade now, doing just fine. With this volatility, of course, but this product is what we call a perpetual stock. So it's a perpetual share, which means it never ends. There is no payoff date. It's not a bond in that respect, and it trades. There's full liquidity. It's pegged ideally at $100 per share, and the very, very interesting thing about this product. Usually what happens with dividend stocks is when the dividend gets paid out, they call it the dividend, I can't remember what it's called, the dividend date that you have to be invested in the stock to get the dividend. Like you can't just buy it the day of the dividend and get your dividend. You have to be invested on the dividend date. So this one, STRC, is about 2 weeks before the dividend is paid out. And what was interesting about STRC was usually with most stocks, when the dividend paid out, the stock price goes down to take into account for the money that has been paid out from the stock to investors in the form of a dividend, but STRC did not do that. And I've heard this for a while, that eventually STRC would get to a point where the dividend or the actual price of the stock would not move and not be volatile, because there has been periods, and I'll show you, where there's been some volatility. And people said, well, this is a temporary thing. This product was offered in August, released about $94, and you can see it went up to 97 and then dropped down to 93, and then went up to 100 and then dropped right down to 93 again. So people, were a little panicky about that. But there were people that had done a ton of research on this product that thought, really, this product should peg at $100 and stay there and become less volatile. Number one, as people start to learn about this product, and as the markets become less volatile when it comes to STRC, which is what happened. So yesterday was the NAV dividend date, means you had to be invested yesterday to get the dividend. And many people were wondering, well, what's going to happen? Is that price of STRC going to drop because of this NAV dividend date yesterday? So we'll see. I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you it's been pegging pretty well close to $100 now for close to 2 weeks, which is really actually a good size. Here we were at $99. 11% dividend to me sounds very good compared to a 4.9% payment on a peer-to-peer lending product. Because number one, this also has the opportunity to appreciate in price the stock. It's not going to go up 100% You may see it rise and fall by $1 or $2 over its time. The big thing about this in the US, if you're able to invest in STRC, you don't get taxed on the dividends because it's a return of capital product, which means for, I think, the first 10 years, all they're doing is taxing it as return of capital, which means they're paying back the capital rather than a preferred dividend. So in the US, you don't get taxed. Now in the UK, I think it's treated differently. I think it may be treated as a standard dividend stock. So if you were to put this in an ISA, it would be very, very beneficial because you wouldn't get taxed at all. And an 11% dividend is good. And I personally, I don't invest in things until now because I've learned from Lendy and for all those bad investments that I've made over the last 9 years, unless I do a ton of research and really understand what it is I'm investing in, I don't put any money in anymore. And when this product first came out and was first announced, I did quite a lot of research into the products and I thought, this kind of is a no-brainer. They're going to use all of that money that they're getting from STRC and they're going to buy more Bitcoin, which Strategy has been doing. They've been buying, hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin from the proceeds STRC. Some people say, oh, another Ponzi scheme, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I understand the arguments, but you have to do your research. You have to research why this is a really interesting product. Now, one thing about dividends is if you want to retire based on dividends, I know a couple of you in the chat love dividend stocks, right? Dave Dawson, I know, is one of them. And what I'm starting to understand about dividends is the amount of capital that you need to be able to live off from dividends. If you have 100,000 pounds and you're getting 4.9% from LoanPad, you're going to get 4,900 pounds of an interest dividend. If you just took the money out and didn't compound it, didn't reinvest it, you're going to have 4,900, right? If you're able to get 11%, you're getting 11,000. It's a big difference. So if you're somebody who's looking to retire, obviously a higher dividend is the best way to retire, right? If you've only got to put in less money to get back 4,900, so you're matching the two. I don't know what those numbers are off the top of my head, but it's essentially double. So maybe you only have to put in 50,000 an 11% dividend to get back, what are you getting, 6,000 a year? You have to put in less. Yes, there is a little bit more risk, but the goal, I think, as a dividend investor is to accumulate a higher dividend as possible while understanding the risk to make retirement a little bit easier and to get enough income to what you need to live on. So I think this STRC is a really interesting product. I thought for a while that it would not be offered in the UK because a lot of the times things that are offered in the US, for example, like some of the Bitcoin ETFs that are now starting to come into the UK, were not available in the US, regulatory things. So I thought it was interesting that STRC is available. Trading 212 does not have it, but Hargreaves Lansdown does. AJ Bell, I think, does. So I think it's a really interesting product. I think it's going to really snowball this year. A lot more money is going to come into this product. People are going to be wanting to get higher yields, and using, Bitcoin as a way to do that is very interesting. I think there'll be many more copycat products like this that will come. Again, this was released in August of 2025, so it is new. But I think you'll see a lot more copycat products that come out like this that are offering really, really good yields. So yeah, I'm excited about STRC. Go check it out. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to strategy.com. It's called Stretch, is the name of the product. They've got all the financials, teaches you about the return on capital. By the way, that yield used to be 10%, and that yield can change too. If the stock price starts to drop a little bit, the yields will adjust and go a little bit lower to adjust for that and hopefully help that stock price to recover. The idea is try to peg as close to $100 as possible so you don't get that volatility on a effective yield product, which I think is cool. If you look at other high yield products, and I've dabbled in them myself over the last 3 or 4 months, I'm going to talk about that too. A lot of those high yield products experience very, very serious NAV erosion, price erosion. I'll show you one. Let me give you an example. Let's see. Here's one, for example, WPay, which is a high yield product, which is down 18%. That's an ETF that's available in the UK that pays weekly on this ETF. So that's what you tend to see with those things. You can see it with Musty too, which has had a really, really tough time. Look at that, 78% in 1 year. Again, high yield products. A lot of the times they just erode with when they pay out all these dividends, the price of the stock just erodes so far into oblivion that you're worse off than you were putting it into an index tracker. I don't think STRC is going to suffer that same fate, but we'll see. We'll see. It's a new product. It's one I'm excited about. It's one that's making me really question about peer-to-peer. Also, I do like the idea of being diversified, but I also think sometimes you have to look and see there are better options out there. That could be a better option. We'll see. And yeah, one other thing too, I kind of have to tell on myself. So I wrote an article a long time ago. This was in 2016. It's on the Financial Thing website if you want to go check it out. Investment risk. Write down your game plan. This was an article I started thinking about when I really was very early on into my investing journey, and I thought, I just read the book, right? This book, which I think is the most important book that any investor could read. One of them, the John Bogle book. You can get this on Amazon UK. The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, the only way to guarantee your fair share of stock market returns. It was released in 2017 as a second edition. It's got 11,000 reviews. This really is, I think, the Bible of index tracker investing. And when I read that book, this is when I wrote this article about game plan, how write down what you're going to do and stick with it. And this was my game plan back then. Number 1, buy index funds. Number 2, buy nothing else. And repeat. And what happened was I got invaded by social media. when I joined Twitter, I started reading all of these things. And if you go to a Twitter, like you go to the homepage of X, you're going to see, sorry if anything offensive pops up on here, but you're going to see a lot of things about people talking about a lot of different things. So you got a guy talking here about stretch. We've got this guy talking about trading from $5,000 to $300,000. Oh, by the way, there's an article here about the Orlando Magic, my favorite basketball team, coming to London to play this Sunday. You've got these high yield strategy people talking about, you know, you can get high yield ETFs. You got just all these different things. This person talking about Fidelity and Bitcoin ETFs, right? And this is the problem with social media, is it can fill you with all these different ideas on what you can invest in. And when you start to, the good thing about having a game plan is you can go back to that picture and remind yourself, like, don't be an idiot. Don't stray away from the things that you know work. And index trackers work. Index tracker has worked for a long time. Are you going to get rich off it? Probably not. Is it going to give you 10 or 11% a year in returns? Probably, if you just sit on your hands and do nothing. It's been proven. But I got infected by all these different ideas, right? These high yield strategy ETFs thinking, I need income. I'm 52 going on 53 and I need income. I should be looking at dividends. And let me try to try a ETF with high yield and see if that works. And it didn't. It didn't work. It was lagging behind the S&P 500. It was lagging behind the index trackers. And there's a little bit of a dopamine that comes along from doing things outside of the boring way that works. The Trading 212 portfolio is a perfect example of that. I love this because I get to have this dopamine rush of trying to stock pick and trying to find this 50% winner right here, right? And I get to watch these every day. If I'm just looking at my index tracker, I'm looking at the S&P Vanguard 500. It's pretty boring. All it does is, go up or down, up a little bit, down a bit, up and up and up and up, down a bit, blah, 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 blah. It just keeps going up. But isn't that the way to invest in life, is to go with the smart play? So that's been a real struggle for me personally, is really staying focused on doing what I know works. The index trackers work. Don't get pulled, out of what you normally do through chasing that dopamine rush of hitting one of these stocks like this Venus Concept, which is up 495%. Let's see, is it up for, look, in the last week, 455%, but zoom out, it's down 98% from where it started, of $523. But if you looked at that today, you'd be like, wow, 276 in the last month. I could hop in there and make some real money. Yeah? It's going to go up 500% in a day. It's really easy to be pulled in a million different directions by reading about what other people are doing on the internet, because I suffer from it too. And I would say it's a big problem, and it's one that comes along with social media, with having access to too much information. When you have access to too much information, your brain gets confused and you start wondering if what you're doing is correct. I think silver is a great example of this. Let's look at silver. What's happened with silver recently? Silver has become super volatile. Give me the big chart. How can I look at let's look at the chart on silver. A lot of people online are screaming about silver, and silver is the best investment ever, blah, 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 right? Look how much silver has gone up. From August 2025, it's overly doubled in price. Now it's up to $89 an ounce. You have to remember there was this part right here in 2024. Let's see here, when its high point of, say, 2011, right here, where we saw a price of, what was the price here? It doesn't necessarily, $46.47. So we went through almost 14 years of zero price action on silver, right? From here to here. 2025, so 14 years, more than 14 years of zero price action. We saw a drop from $46 all the way down to $13 an ounce in silver. 13. But now you go onto social media and everybody's saying, gold and silver's the place. But you had to write out all those years of zero gains. And most people wouldn't have done it. If they were investing, I don't think there's very many people that are going to sit through 14 years of no price gains in an investment just because they believe in something so much. You have to be a really big believer to sit there for 14 years through zero price action. Maybe if you think silver is the be-all and end-all and you've always believed that, sure, do it. But to me, that silver chart looks a bit crap. It looks volatile. Silver going down 4% in a day shows volatility. But if we look at our index tracker that we know, look at the S&P 500, we're going to see a steady rise. Yes, we got this bad spot here, which happened in April to every stock and every ETF, but we just sat on our hands and did nothing. That would be the way to accumulate pretty good wealth. And not making mistakes. Not making trading 2-on-2 mistakes like I have done with a minus 50% stock or a minus 13% stock. So be careful not to get dragged in to that because it's easy. It happens to me all the time. I start thinking about, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be an easy way. Why can't I hit one of these stocks that go 300x? It's a bit of a curse, I'll tell you. Let's see if there's anything else that I got for you. I think that's really it. Did I miss anything? Somebody had asked me a question about... the reason why I was telling you about STRC is this came in. I noticed STRC is being offered on some UK share buying platforms. Goodbye or no. Happy New Year. Darren and Cheem. That was why I was talking about the STRC, because it's something that I had dipped my toe in August of 2025. And then I actually stupidly sold off half of my portfolio of STRC during that dip. Right, which annoyed me because it went right back up again. You see how when you can panic? I sold right here, down here, half of it, November, stupidly, because I got freaked out and read things online that went against what my conviction was in this product, and I listened to the damn people online rather than listening to myself. Very painful. But anyway, that is all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Please hit that thumbs up if you would. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Hit the thumbs up. And let me see if there's any interesting comments about my ranting today. Hello, Chimpo Naughty. Nice to see you. Rangers 1066 AD. We had a bunch of different topics. Sounds like stock market discussion. Not really. We had some peer-to-peer discussion. Capital stackers have had some massive losses on loans recently. Ugh. There's nothing really bad hidden or unknown to us. Cufflink sort out their governance and compliance issues. Hopefully FCA will lift restrictions at some point. Has there been details, though, about what those compliance and governance issues were? I think the lack of transparency is the big problem. Sad but true, I agree. It's not wise to invest in peer-to-peer anymore. Small extra interest in no way worth the risk. Too many bad apples. Chris Hay, I've too reduced my exposure to peer-to-peer by 95% over the last 12 months for all the reasons Lawrence is articulating. I really want to love peer-to-peer like I did 5 years ago. It's just not there anymore for me. So if all that happens, then Cufflink could potentially be a reasonable proposition for investment, whereas probably other peer-to-peer companies might have hidden issues and not been scrutinized by the FCA. Yeah, but what are the issues, though? What are the specific issues? And again, the problem is that there are issues that go on that we are not privy to, and then we find out too late, right? Look at the collateral situation there, advertising to be FCA regulated, and they weren't. Dividend pegged to $100, but if every year there is consistent inflation and currency debasement, would it be considered a good investment in a few years' time? I think if you can get 11% on a dividend, it's going to keep you ahead for a while, at least, of inflation. Versus, like, a lot of the people in the UK are sitting in savings accounts at 3.25%, and they've been doing it for decades and decades. Certainly 11%'s got to be better than that, right? I think most people would agree that if you can get 11% on your money every year and compounding that money, you're going to stay well ahead of inflation. Also, Strategy has a pretty big cash fund now. I don't know if you know that, but they started a US dollar reserve to protect December 2025. It was announced that they have a $1.44 billion US dollar reserve, which has now been increased to $2.19 billion, which was form sent through the SEC. $2.19 billion in cash. That cash amount is going to increase by a lot. It's going to become higher and higher and higher. I think that's pretty cool. What about Folk to Folk and Relendex? They weren't in your good list. Look, I think Folk to Folk is fine. I think they've been doing a good job. Relendex, and I don't know much about Relendex. I've never invested through them. And the list wasn't my list, by the way. It was Fourth Way's list. I was just reading through what they had as their top 7. They did not list Folk to Folk or Relendex on their top 7. But Folk to Folk, yeah, I mean, Folk to Folk I think is done fine. I think what I wanted to really focus on is how quickly things can change, how quickly things changed at Cufflink from going to be somewhere that I would invest money through to a place I would just put the brakes on and say, do I want to continue investing through Cufflink? It changed very fast. I mean, in a matter of one day, we find out Narinda leaves the company, and then the FCA comes in and says, stop taking on new lenders. Why? So that's it. Anyway, look, I hope that the peer-to-peer lending industry thrives. I really do. This is a special place in my heart for it. I hope it does well. I hope it continues to do well. I hope it gives people a place to park their money and make returns. I don't want to see it fail. I've seen too many companies fail. I think that's the bigger, greater issue. You have such a big fallout of companies that have failed. It just leaves a bit of a sour taste in your mouth. And if you're a newer peer-to-peer lending investor, you haven't experienced that. Thank goodness for you. You're lucky. You're lucky. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. We'll see you soon. Keep your eye on the email list. Find out when the next stream is. That's all I got for you. That's all Holly's got for you. See her new bed, by the way. That was a Christmas present. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.